You're listening to the Back Home Network, presented by Home Field Apparel.
Welcome back to Crimson Cast. Galen Clavios, Scott Caulfield joining you here on a rare Saturday version of Crimson Cast, the weekend edition. Normally we're on Sunday mornings. We're talking about what Indiana did the previous night. Instead, we are here on Saturday because Indiana played on Friday, as the Big Ten Network has to have some inventory. So Indiana was the sacrificial lamb for that. But a record-breaking day, Scott, in terms of IU football. We're going to talk about all of that and a lot to talk about with that game and some of the conversation surrounding it and just where Indiana's at right now. So, Scott, first of all, great to see you. And how are you doing? How's everything going?
I'm doing awesome, doing fantastic, doing well. And got to say, I met a couple of Crimson Cast fans out there. Appreciate it. Somebody walking in the stadium, somebody in the nutrition center said hi. I'm really bad with names. I barely know Galen's name, so it's like I forget names, but those who say hi, I appreciate it. And it's funny, we're walking up to the stadium. A guy who listens to Crimson Cash was just asking about the point spread, which is great. But then my wife's like, how does he know you? And she's like, oh, wait, you guys do video now too. And I'm like, well, there's that. I was like, but also like I'm loud. And I guess my voice, like I'm a loud person. So it's very possible just me talking to my kids, people hear the voice. It's like, I know that voice.
You know, it's an interesting point though, because on the video front, the number of people who watch, we really appreciate you folks watching, whether it's on YouTube or on Spotify, has gone up significantly. And, you know, I think for most of you and for us too, it's nice for you to be able to recognize us. We get a chance to talk to you. It's an easier way of kind of communicating directly. It's an interesting world we're in because, like, you think back to podcasting was really supposed to be like a different version of radio. Right. And it's gradually mutated into what everything is mutated into, which is some kind of video. And we actually, I think, you know, what I'm looking forward to as we get into latter portions of the football season is we'd love to start doing some of these live and actually seeing all you folks in person. But this phenomenon stretches to other podcasts. Like, you know, we've done like the Bison Chat. For those of you who haven't tuned into that, we did our first episode this past Tuesday, and I had people who had never watched the regular Crimson Cast. They recognized me from that. So it's cool. It's quite a fascinating time we find ourselves in, and I think it's neat that so many people are just watching IU football content, whether it's us or somebody else.
Well, it is funny, the dichotomy, because I try really hard not to get into the comments at all. But some of the YouTube stuff I've seen, because we've had some pretty solid numbers, I think, for us. And I look at some of the comments, and you know, the comments can be harsh, and people are like, you know, they say, you know, you suck or this is bad, and it's like, but I appreciate the in-person, because no one's ever come up to me like, hey man, you're on the podcast, you suck. Like, everyone's always been really nice, and I appreciate that. And by the way, if you think I suck, that's awesome. Like, just keep that to yourself or keep it in the online discourse. Like, I appreciate all of the positive comments. Like, yes, I have an ego, I like it, but it's been nice in the times people have recognized me for the podcast. It's always been very positive, and people have nice things to say. So I appreciate that. Thank you. And if you have something not nice to say, keep it on the online comments, and I will continue to not pay attention to it.
It is funny how, you know, there's this thing it's actually a great human psychology experiment.
Right.
Because, and look, I'll say this, most of the people that listen to Crimson Cast are very positive and complimentary. There's people that argue or disagree with what we say, which is fine. I mean, this is all just opinions for the most part at the end of the day. But so I study social media in my day job, and there's this thing called the online disinhibition effect, which is this fascinating psychological phenomenon where things that you would do or say from a social perspective online, you would never do in person. And it has to do with a whole bunch of things, dissociative anonymity, and there's a word called solipsism, which I'm not going to dive into. That's a little bit advanced for the podcast, but it is interesting. You know, people, even shows where there are vociferous disagreements, generally the only people that will come up and say hi are people who are willing to say something nice or actually do like your show. It's just, I've always found that distinction very interesting, especially when fans of Crimson Cast meet each other when meeting us. I've seen like people who argue online suddenly like, oh, hey, I've met you in person. We have something in common. We both like IU football. And then they're best friends afterwards. It's a really interesting thing.
The other thing I'll say, it is nice, like amongst us, like it's, a subset of a subset. Like you're already an IU football fan because I'm meeting you at a game. Then you're a Crimson Cast fan. So like a sub, like two of the people I met with yesterday, who reached out yesterday to say hi, both kind of joke like, God, you leaving at halftime today? So it's like, I do enjoy like we're also now ribbing each other on we got to be true fans to stay for the whole game. So like, I appreciate those jokes. By the way, we're not going to get into today. You did a great VIP video. I agree with all of it. But like, I brought my 11 and 8-year-old to the game. It's a late game. Like we have an hour drive, hour 15. It's like we did leave right after halftime. I know we're part of the problem, but it's like I have a bedtime to stick to, Coach Sig. I'm sorry, but I will say this as we lead into the game a little bit. I know we have reads to do too, but I realize I've been kind of doing this wrong also because a lot, the last couple of years, we haven't come to some of these types of games because it's like, oh, it's going to be a blowout or like, who cares? We're going to win. I give my wife credit. She's like, no, let's go. I was kind of on the face. She's like, let's go. We don't go to enough games. Let's go. So we went. My two boys had a blast. Yeah. Like my 11-year-old was getting into sports and watching him. He's like, oh, we scored. And he's liking the players. Starting like that number 4 is pretty good. And it's like, oh yeah, because I realize I'm only taking him to games where we just get our ass kicked or we get blown out. Like he sees us do nothing good. Like having him see us do positive things. It's like, this is how you're going to grow fans. So in a small way, I'm like, I'm actually so happy I went to the game last night because he was like ecstatic and like, oh man, we're crushing it. We're scoring. It's like, he's not worried about the net rating or like, where does Western Illinois? He's just like, oh, their logo is cool. And like, we're kicking the hell out of them. It's like, he's not worried about how they rank or what conference they're going to be in. So it's like, I'm really happy I brought him last night. Sorry, total aside, but it's like, go to enjoy more butt whoopings.
The number of people that have complained about the low caliber of Western Illinois, I think they're missing what you just said. And actually, my 2 girls had a blast at the game. We stayed into the fourth quarter. And actually, my oldest was mad that we left slightly before the game ended. But I think you've hit upon a point here that's really valuable, which is that when a kid's starting to play a video game for the first time, you know what you don't do? You
go to varsity or All-American.
Play an All-American. Don't play at the hardest level. Like,
that's what I still do. Yeah, when I bought NCAA 25, it's like freshman. Let's go.
Yeah, pop it in on the easiest mode. I don't care what game it is, and people are going to be like, "Ooh, cool!" And then when they start to get bored with it, then they'll ratchet the difficulty level up. And I really do think we've lost sight sometimes of how gratifying it can be to just mollywomp an opponent and be able to watch that taking place. It's it really, especially for kids, to watch Indiana score 77 points, which no kid has ever watched in the history of IU football, although now there's some debate about that this morning, which we'll get into. I really do think it matters a lot in terms of their perception of it being fun. And that, fun and IU football is a concept that most long-time IU football fans are just not able to get their heads wrapped around. And it's part of the identity of being an IU football fan going into 2024. Maybe we're entering an era where it can just be fun and there don't have to be caveats.
Yeah.
I don't know. But anyway.
I love it. Let's go.
Before we get into the rest of the podcast, just a reminder, we're part of the Back Home Network, and the Back Home Network is brought to you by Home Field Apparel, your place to go for the finest in college fashions, the softest fabrics, the coolest designs. They keep pumping out incredible stuff. We're right in the midst of what I call home field season, which is, of course, the college football season. So much amazing stuff out on the website. Go to homefieldapparel.com. Check it out. Follow them on Instagram. Use the code HOME23. Get 15% off your first order, and you won't regret it. If you've already ordered from Home Field, which I'm guessing most of our listeners have up to this point, they still have great deals throughout. They have a great point system. You get free stuff a lot faster than you think you will, and there's a ton of Indiana stuff on Home Field Apparel, and we would recommend you go check that out as soon as humanly possible. So again, homefieldapparel.com, proud sponsor of the Back Home Network. Also, just a note, we are on Substack. Be sure to go to crimsoncast.substack.com and subscribe. It's free to do the subscription where we send you podcasts and other items directly to your inbox. So you will know pretty much before anybody else that new episodes have dropped. We also occasionally include reading materials. There's a paid option if you'd like to help support the podcast, $5 a month, $50 a year. And we try to do occasional VIP videos. ideally in English, including the one that I did this earlier week where we talked a little bit about this attendance thing that's kind of a thing and not really a thing at the same time. But this is the season to be doing Crimson Cast on Substack. We'd love to have you join the nearly 1,000 followers that are now in the Crimson Cast army on Substack. So please, I don't know, maybe it's not an army. It's more like a brigade right now. We get to 2,000, we'll call it an army. But join us on Substack. We'd love to have you aboard. Anyway, Scott, let's go ahead and dive in to the nitty gritty. Indiana wins 77-3. This was a game.
Just we're not going to say that very often in this podcast. Say it again.
77-3. I mean, the only game I've ever been to for IU that was even remotely close to this game happened 11 years ago, and it was Indiana State at Memorial Stadium. Most of you probably remember that game, but only vaguely. And I think a lot of people had forgotten that the score of that game, that was not the season. It was actually a different season. The 2013 game that I was thinking about was actually 73-35. There were other games where Indiana blew people out by quite a bit, but it's interesting. 73 points is a lot. Normally it's coupled with a terrible defense.
Right.
This was not. This was like a pure, like, we are just going to butt whoop this team, and there's not going to be a lot that anybody will be able to do about it. And it was obvious from the very beginning that this was a game that Indiana was going to really dominate in. And you kind of knew that from the opponent. The opponent was not good. I mean, Western Illinois, we talked about this in our season previews. This is one of the worst FCS teams. And this was not a game where iron is sharpening iron. That was not really the point of the game. The point of the game was execution. And I was explaining this to somebody at the game when they were questioning, like, why are we playing this? This is kind of non-competitive. I was like, yes, it is non-competitive. But this is where, with a with a new team, a team that's got a bunch of pieces that haven't fit together as well before, or haven't fit together at all, like haven't played together, you need a game against live competition that isn't a threat to beat you, where you can practice execution. You can practice getting the ball out of the pocket quickly. You can practice different blocking schemes. You can practice different patterns on defense. You can, get different personnel sets in there and make sure people are comfortable with their roles. And we've seen Indiana play games like this before and not be nearly as dominant. And I think it's, from my perspective, mission accomplished for this game, A, because of how dominant IU was on both sides of the ball, but B, because they get the confidence, not just in their own execution, but in the fact that they were able to beat a team by this margin. Football is so much about confidence. It's so much about being able to say, wow, we really feel good about what we're doing and who we are and how we're growing as a football team. This is the exact type of game Indiana generally has not been able to pull off. And here we see them pull it off and do so in record-breaking fashion.
Yeah, it was really interesting to me because I heard some of that in the stands also. People being like, man, why are we playing this? Like, they suck. And it's like, all right, well, they played Minnesota a couple years ago. Like, a lot of teams play a bad team somewhere along the way. Like, we're allowed to do that too. Yeah. I have some text chains with some friends, one of a fantasy football where it's like a bunch of different guys from different, college affiliations. And they were kind of ribbing like, oh man, IU like putting 70 on a bad team. It's like, we're allowed to do this. Like, everyone, like, other teams do this. Alabama does this, not making a connection, like, or saying a comparison. We're allowed to do this. In the end, there's a ton of great takeaways from this game that we will talk about. The way that I frame this, unfortunately, is we will be able to frame this game better at the end of the year. Because if this Indiana team goes to a bowl game or wins 7 or 8 games like you and I think, then we'll look back and be like, hey man, like, this IU team was pretty good, and they did exactly what a good team should do, which is dispatch a bad opponent, put them out of their misery, and take care of things. If this Indiana team is, subpar than we expect, if they win 3 or 4 games this year, then we'll look back and be like, all right, man, we beat up on a really bad opponent. So I do think a lot of how this game is going to be framed will be changed as we know what Indiana looks like at the end of the year. But right now, all options are on the table, and I look at it as it's a bad team, and you went out there and you did everything you need to do in a very professional, workmanlike attitude. Right. I will we're going to play a game here. You know, we're going to play, but I'm going to play by myself, and then you'll be able to join. I'm going to mention Bite-Sized Bison first. So I get it in at the 15-minute mark.
There you go.
You know, Taylor Lehman had a really great recap of the game, some of the stats, and the stats are unbelievable in English. But one of the stats is that Indiana averaged 10.3 yards per play. So basically they're averaging a first down on every play, which is unbelievable. Like, I'm not sure I've seen that, you know, in addition with the 700 yards of offense. And the thing that I would say finally is what was interesting about it is it also didn't even look like we were throwing the kitchen sink play-wise. Like, it still felt like we were being very, very tight with our offense. Like, we were kind of just running RPOs up the middle. And then when we weren't, you know, Western Illinois was doing so much to kind of stop the run that there was just open guys in the slot. That's like, it's not like we were running crazy gadget plays. It's just like we were just going back to pass, and Rourke's like, all right, there's a guy who is completely wide open. I'm going to pass to him. So it still felt like it doesn't feel like we threw the kitchen sink at this game to get 77 points. We were just kind of running a very vanilla offense that Western Illinois was not able to stop.
So first of all, I apologize for my brain breaking in the intro. The Indiana State game was the one I was referring to. There was a different game I was thinking in my head when I was saying that, so I apologize. But yes, the last time Indiana scored 73 was against Indiana State in 2013. But here's where I want to take this, and I think this is important if you're going to complain about the caliber of opposition. I want to go back to 2009, and from there move forward and cover every game that Indiana's played against what one might consider questionable non-conference opposition. And let's just kind of, I've got a reason for this. So anyway, in 2009, Indiana started the season playing FCS Eastern Kentucky. They win that game 19-13. Not a particularly good showing, and that was not a particularly good IU team. 2010, they played Towson in the first game of the season. Slightly better, they win 51-17. The points were nice, but you let 17 points get scored by Towson, which was a harbinger of that defense not being very good, which it was not. 2011, Indiana plays South Carolina State, also FCS. Not, you know, that was the one win Indiana had that year, and they were 38-21. Well, that was kind of a barometer of how bad that team was. 2022.
Just real quick, I have to interrupt right here.
Yeah.
That's the game my friends Jeff and Carol and I always still talk about, because they brought their dance team, which was like the Red Steppers were dancing, and their dance team was literally called the Champagne Girls, and it was everything you'd expect. And it was like, we still joke about it because it was like, wow, this is a dance routine we've not seen in Memorial Stadium for years. So anyway, we've been talking about it last night at the game. It's a joke that continues to keep giving. So anyway, sorry.
No, it's fine. It's 2012. Indiana played Indiana State, FCS team, won 24-17. Finished 4-8 that year. The following year, Indiana plays Indiana State, 73-35, the final score. Well, Indiana could definitely score that year, but their defense really let them down throughout the course of the season. That was a pretty good indication of things. The following year, again, Indiana State, 28-10. That season kind of exists in a vacuum. But again, still, it's an FCS opponent, not a particularly good one, and you're winning by 18 points. 2015, Indiana beats Southern Illinois, non-conference FCS opponent, 48-47. And that was when everybody realized that we had perhaps the worst defense in college football. Still went to a bowl. And you can keep going down the list. Like, to me, yes, like Western Illinois, not a good team. But anytime you beat a team like that really, really heavily, I do think that it says a lot about where your team is at in terms of execution, in terms of confidence. And, you know, you just, the teams that IU has had that have played competition of that caliber and not blown them out have tended to have a lot more wrong with them that we've uncovered throughout the course of the year. So the people who would say that it's a worthless game or a game that's not really a barometer, I don't think the history of just Indiana football over the last 15 years bears that out. You know, generally speaking, what good teams we've had during that span have done really well. And I will point to, as an example, 2019, Indiana plays Eastern Illinois and wins 52-0. Not quite as impressive as this game, but still pretty impressive. And as we saw, as that team went along throughout the course of the season, and they followed that up a couple weeks later, they beat Connecticut 38-3. That was a team that had it together even early on. And, you know, you could kind of take some solace from that. And it's interesting as well because, like, as you think about what Indiana has to do to be successful, as we've talked about throughout the course of the season, okay, they needed to get their defense up to a different plane than they had them last year. Well, they've definitely shown that through the first 2 weeks. Last week, they beat FIU, but there were some concerns about the execution on the offense. They go out and those executional concerns are just gone in this game. So I do think that the breadcrumbing here is like leading in the direction of, wow, IU might actually be figuring some things out. Of course, we won't know for sure until they play a top line opponent, but that may not happen for another 6 to 8 weeks. I mean, look at the schedule. This is not murderer's row to start the season. And it's almost like it gets incrementally harder as opposed to leaps and bounds or exponentially harder. And this is exactly the kind of buildup you hope for. Obviously, they've got to go out and execute next week against UCLA, but this is a nice start, and it's a good mental and emotional place to be in coming out of week 2.
Yes. And the other thing, too, if you were not at the game or didn't watch the game, I'm going to kind of echo something I said after week 1. If you just see the score, it's like, oh, man, they're just, running up the score. It's like, no, we ran a very vanilla offense. A lot of our plays are just working very well. But again, obviously the team was excited when they scored and fired up, but the vibe of the team is so different than the last couple of years that it didn't feel like they were going ballistically excited or just, over the top excited when they score. It's like, all right, we scored. That's great. You could almost feel it from the team. It's like, this is what we're supposed to be doing. Right. And obviously they're fired up. They're excited, but it was like, all I could say is like last year when we scored, it was like this just explosion of like, oh my gosh, I can't believe we did it. And this felt very, again, going back to it in a good way, very workmanlike. Just like, hey, we have a job to do. We need to beat this team into submission, and we're going to do that. And in a way, it's like it was the perfect game because you had a lot of things go right, but there were still a couple of miscues on offense. There was only 2 penalties. Again, we're really tightening up the penalties, but there was just enough there that I feel like Cignetti has something to talk about. Like, hey, man, you had a shutout. You didn't get it. You're asking a lot, but it does feel like that there's pieces there that he can work on. You even saw it in the game. Cignetti, going into halftime, they're up 42-3. And I saw him pull aside 2 different players and kind of slap them on the helmet and tell them something like, you got to work on this. And it was very much like, there's still a lot to work on here. But I'm continually impressed so far this year with the professionalism and kind of the very, not too high, not too low emotion of this team, which I think is going to help throughout the year when we get into some tighter situations.
Look at some stats here from this game. And as you mentioned, like there's just a lot of things to like about what Indiana did. You go 33 first downs to 8, 703 total yards to 121. That was the first time an Indiana team had ever racked up 700 plus yards in a game in the entire history of the program. That's big. You're almost evenly split run and pass yards, 325 rushing yards, 378 passing yards at 7.1 yards per rush, which goes into something we talked about last week in terms of getting that number up. A second game now with no turnovers, and the defense ends up collecting 3 more. So I think you're at +4 now in turnover margin. And then, you go to the individual numbers and, Curtis Rourke, there were some questions about his individual, looks like ESPN, of course, decided to stop having their stuff pop up. We don't need to worry about that. Curtis Rourke, 15-17, 268 yards, 15.8 yards per attempt, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. We get a nice 3 passes out of Taven Jackson and a really beautiful touchdown pass to Omar Cooper I think it was in the 4th quarter that happened. Alberto Mendoza even came in and threw something. And then you get this nice spread of running backs and other individuals who rack up some yards on the ground. Justice Ellison, another great game, 13 yards per rush, gets 117 yards total. Kobe Martin gets on the stat sheet. Tyson Lawton looked pretty good. Elijah Green got some carries. Kalen Black got some carries. Like, this is where everything was working. And yes, again, lesser competition, but so much of this really does come down to this idea of if you can get all these people feeling like they're making contributions, maybe they realize, hey, the contributions may not come every single time I'm out there, but I will have an opportunity to make a contribution. And this offense is putting me in a position to do that. Same thing with the receiving core. Like, we were surprised at how little Elijah Surratt contributed last week. This week, 6 catches, 137 yards, and a touchdown, and one of them like a really nice one off of I think it was a skinny post or something like that he scored that touchdown on early on. Omar Cooper Jr. had a really good game. And you didn't see Donovan McCulley at all. They rested him. They give him a chance to kind of work his way back into action. It's hard to not get excited just about the offensive weapons that Indiana's got, not just because of the weapons, but because they seem to have a sense of how they want to use them. And now 2 games in a row, granted against lesser competition, I will keep caveating that, but you've been able to establish an idea of what each player can do and how they fit into this overall system. And now you've got a bag of options at your disposal as you go into these next games against tougher competition.
I mean, some of the other stats out there, Indiana's 19 for 21, but it's like, look at it a different way. They threw 2 incomplete passes. They threw 21 times, 2 incomplete passes across the entire game. They held, what was it, like 65 rushing yards total for Western Illinois. I mentioned the penalties. They had 9 penalties in the first game. Last night, they had just 2 penalties for 25 yards. And I will say, after one of the penalties, which got them to like a 2nd and 25, a Justice Ellison run immediately got them back to a first down. Like they immediately resolved that problem with a run. Justice looked awesome. Like he was just running amok. To me, what I'm getting at is, and again, I'm same thing caveating with you. It's like lesser opponent, but we've seen this IU team beat lesser opponents in kind of a mismatch way, or like we beat them because they're bad. Like this is, you have to say lesser opponent, but you also do have to say like we won this game and we scored 77 because we were executing at a very high level, which I don't think you can say for any of those other games you mentioned in that history of IU playing lesser opponents. Some of those games, those scores were a lot tighter than I remember.
Right.
They were not great games. But most of the time when we're beating those teams, we're doing it because we're just better, they're not as good as us. And they made more mistakes than we did. In this case, some of that's true, but 2 incomplete passes for an entire game, 2 penalties, holding a team under 100 yards rushing, averaging 10 yards a play. That's an offense that is absolutely humming. Yes, you're playing weaker competition, but you're still seeing an offense that's like, hey, if the other team is giving us these things, we're going to execute at a level that I'm not sure we've seen Indiana execute in years, against any kind of competition. So like that does have to be said. Again, if this season doesn't go the way we expect, we'll look back and be like, all right, that was fool's gold. And maybe it was just more about them being really, really bad. But at this point in time, I do think you have to say, and with a whole new coaching staff and a whole new approach, be like, look, there might really be something different happening here. And this might be, I think we're kind of erring too far on the side of like being cautious because Western Illinois is bad. But let's just, for a second, again, go into a Scott Fever dream. Let's say that Indiana is really, really good. I mean, let's say that like we finished the year 8-9 wins, we finished ranked and we're ranked 23rd. We'll look back and be like, oh yeah, well that makes sense. Like you take a ranked team, like if Western Illinois next week was playing Texas, you'd be like, of course the score is going to be like 85-0 if Texas is locked in. We could look back and be like, that was a harbinger of like, hey, this team is really good. So I think there's the other side we have to look at too in a very positive way.
One of my favorite Scottisms is when you hop in the time machine and then retroactively yell at straw men. It's a great phenomenon. I wish you did more of it, but yes, no, everything you said, I agree with though. It is one of those things where we won't know until later. And all I can say, having been to both games and been there for the majority of both games and having watched what's been coming out of the press conferences, there is a confidence among the players on this team. A lot of it flows from the coaching staff, and the coaching staff is, they've got the CEO in Signetti who is projecting this aura of we are trying to reach for a level of perfection, and that should be our standard. And then you've got his assistants who just taking what they do on social media at face value. They are hype. They are focused. They know what to tell their players. And what we've heard throughout the course of the offseason was we feel a lot more detail oriented than we've ever felt before. That's coming from the players. And so, look, there's going to be moments when Indiana does not perform at the levels that we've seen up to this point because the competition will be harder. But I just get the feeling there's a different aura around this IU team. And you can debate that. You can say that you can't take anything out of these first two games because of the quality of opponent. I will counter with, look at college football. Go through teams' rosters and go through teams' schedules year on year. We are almost always caught in a kind of a hall of mirrors of our own perception of Indiana football, and we tend to think that that extends elsewhere, where the way that our seasons have gone, watching as fans, it's like this is how it is everywhere. And you tend to lose sight of the fact that most really good teams beat up on really bad teams in their non-conference, and they're able to utilize those moments of learning how to execute, of feeling better about what they're doing in a positive way as they move forward into playing harder competition. It's all one of those situations. Like, football is just such a confidence-focused game. You only have 12 games in the regular season. It's not like basketball. Like, I was talking to somebody yesterday about strength of schedule, and it's like, is this playing, Western Illinois really preparing us to play tougher competition? And I would argue, I don't think it matters in football. In basketball, yeah, I think the talent disparity between bad basketball teams and good basketball teams, and the number of points, and the fact that ultimately you're relying on a somewhat arbitrary thing, which is a ball going through a hoop. The margins are much smaller. I do think that there is some benefit in playing a harder schedule because it does prepare you for playing against tougher teams. It allows you to react in different ways. Football, I've never been convinced really works that way. We see it in the NFL every year. Teams that make the playoffs tend to be teams that play weaker competition. Those tend to be teams that weren't very good the previous year, and that's why they're playing a weaker schedule. It is because they're playing a third place or fourth place schedule. Some of them get into the playoffs and they aren't ready. That's fine. Like in college football, the whole idea is just make the postseason. It really doesn't matter how you get there. And I also think, as we talked about in our preseason podcast, there are only two teams for sure, maybe even one team for sure, that I would say on Indiana's schedule is demonstrably like in a different stratosphere from them. And so for Indiana, it really is about getting the ball rolling downhill, or getting the rock rolling downhill, maybe to be more apropos, and getting yourself feeling like we can do this against this level of competition, and that will scale up as we move forward because we believe in what we're doing and we believe in what the coaches are telling us. And there have yet to be curveballs really in that. The smallest curveball was, well, the offense didn't look as good as it could have been against FIU. Well, boom. Here's your serum to fix that. It's a 74-point victory against any team. I mean, there are human beings that were in those uniforms. This wasn't like an AI simulation of a game. This was an actual game, and Indiana won by 74 points. In football, Archie Miller's asking, like, how do you score 77 points at Indiana? I'm kidding. Before we
taking stray bullets,
sorry, I was feeling frisky. Before we move on, wanted to just remind everybody that one of our sponsors this year for Crimson Cast is Hoosier Game Day Lager, brought to you by Upland Brewing Company. Hoosier Game Day Lager, the perfect companion for watching IU football in the stands at Memorial Stadium, for hosting your own tailgate, for sitting at home watching IU games on the big screen that you inevitably or invariably have in your living room or your rumpus room, or going out to the bars and watching IU basketball or IU football or any IU sport. The official beer of IU athletics, and a great signature can. Scott, I saw so many of these in the parking lot at Memorial Stadium, in the Memorial Stadium itself. It is a crisp Vienna-style lager that drinks smooth and easy, but actually has some flavor to it, unlike some of those very weak adjunct lagers that we won't mention by name here on the podcast. Hoosier Game Day Lager available pretty much anywhere you can buy beer in central Indiana, also available at any of Upland's many locations throughout central and southern Indiana. Go pick up a case of Hoosier Game Day Lager and enjoy responsibly, the official beer of IU athletics.
I was trying to count up the number of games Archie Miller scored over 77 points his first year in the Big Ten. And there's a lot that he didn't. So yeah, he'd be happy to do that. No, I think, if you go back to one of the refrains that, you have talked about, but we have both talked about on this podcast quite a bit is, how IU overschedules and puts themselves in bad positions. And this was a game that really showed like why it's important, because everything you're talking about is true, but it also, you look at some of the successful seasons that we've had even in recent history, and I'd say where Tom Allen was most successful is where you kind of get the rock rolling downhill, or you just get the vibes moving. And you look at 2019, and this is, again, what's so great about this year is we don't have one of these walls hitting us. But, in 2019, you beat Ball State, you beat Eastern Illinois, you kind of get some mojo going. You have to play Ohio State. It's like, all right, that's a smackdown. But, they beat UConn. They played a Michigan State team pretty well, only lost by 9. And then it's like they have a soft part of the schedule. They have some confidence. And it's like, boom, Rutgers, Maryland, Nebraska, Northwestern, win. And then you're at Penn State. They only lost that game by 7. That's at Penn State, who's 9th in the country at that time. They outkick their coverage, so to speak. That is the thing is, that's a formula. Getting your team just kind of roll and get things rocking and rolling. The nice thing here is it does feel like with Cignetti, there's also something behind some of just the vibes. Like it does feel like there's some real execution, some real coaching, some real professionalism. But that doesn't also mean that some of what, Tom Allen had, like the vibes when things are going well, you can, the collective can be better than the singular. I think that's also true. Like both things can be true. And that's kind of where you get great programs.
Right.
And again, when you look at our schedule, yes, next week we're playing on the road in the Big Ten, but it's not at Michigan. It's not at Ohio State. It's at UCLA, which, like we've said multiple times, is not the toughest Big Ten opponent you're going to have on the road. And then you're back home for a little bit against some mid-level Big Ten opponents. That is, anyway, I'm agreeing with everything you're saying, but I think this is, again, why you schedule like this is you give yourself a lead up. You give yourself, some wins literally, but also figuratively on the team to kind of get the momentum going. And now, the way it breaks this year is you don't have that wall. So now you really could be looking at a 3-4-5-0 start. And, if it, again, I continue to harp at this, but if they beat UCLA next week, no one's going to be like, yeah, but imagine if we had played somebody tougher in the second week. Like, would we have? It's like no one's going to say, it's like, holy crap, we're good. Like, it's all going to wash away, and we'll be 3-0, and there'll be no debate on whether our second win was good or bad. The team we were playing was good or bad.
A couple other notes from a statistical perspective. A lot of people contributed on defense statistically. Aiden Fisher, another game where he leads the team in tackles. I get the feeling this guy's going to become a very special member of IU football in lore, just in terms of the season he's already having. Linnell Carr Jr. with 5 tackles, 2 solo tackles, a half a sack, a pass defended. He had a really good game. Terry Jones Jr., good game, 5 tackles, 2 of those solo. And you get 2 sacks out of Mikhail Kamara. You get a sack and a half out of Tyreek Tucker. A lot of pressure on the quarterback. Poor Nathan Lamb, sacrificial, one might say, for Western Illinois. But really like to see the defense being able to spread things out this much and being able to, again, instill some confidence in a variety of members of the team and also get a chance to try some different fronts out. And again, I was so impressed with how, in the first quarter especially, how swarming Indiana's defense was on running plays. And this is going to be, again, it's one of those things where a lot of that was not necessarily IU getting past their offensive linemen because the runs were going outside. But to watch Indiana react as quickly as they did on a lot of those running plays, again, I think is something that you can take some confidence from as Indiana goes into this next stretch of games.
I totally agree. And again, you're seeing, the first guy who touches the opposing team is tackling them.
Yeah.
Which I know sounds very simple and it's like should be done, but it's been a hallmark of IU for years where we actually normally get to the right place at the right time. You just don't make the tackle, and then you let somebody get an extra 4 or 5 yards. This time it's like we had 2 or 3 guys in the right place at the right time.
So, Scott, this is an interesting statistical quirk that I hadn't noticed until just now. Last night's game was the first time that something didn't happen in an IU game for at least the last 8 years. Can you tell me what that thing was that didn't happen?
Okay, let me think out loud. There was was it penalty related? Was there not a penalty on the defense? Because there's only 2 penalties. I know one was on the offense.
That may be an answer. That's not what I'm aiming at here.
Did we punt?
We didn't punt.
Is that it?
That's it. Good job.
Let's go.
0 punts. And so I've only got stats up on my screen back to 2016. There's only been 1 game since in that entire time, but going back to 2016, where Indiana had a game where they punted less than twice. And that was actually, again, in 2019 when they played UConn. They only punted once in that game. So I'm going to keep digging and see if I can actually find the last time Indiana didn't punt. But I thought that was a really remarkable statistic.
That's interesting. Yeah, I feel like we need to make that. There needs to be some kind of Signetti, don't punt Signetti or something. Yeah, there's something there. Figure it out. Marketing department.
Anyway, so as we get into, I guess anything else you'd like to talk about? It was, I mean, there were so many laudable things with IU. A lot of it really did come down to just, how Indiana was able to execute pretty much the entire game. They really didn't take their foot off the gas, but they also, as you said at the beginning, they didn't really show very much in this game. They were just executing very basic offense. It appeared very well. And, so football-wise, I mean, it was interesting. 4 different quarterbacks took snaps. Mendoza got those snaps towards the end, and I think Tyler Cherry got some snaps too. And it was interesting. Just the number of people who got in there and got a chance to play is really good. It's one of those things again where you've got the 4 games for your no red shirt status, and I'm just pleased that you give everybody a little bit of game time. You give everybody a chance to try out what they're doing out there. And I do think that that's going to make a big difference down the line for Indiana, just in getting buy-in, because the more people you can feel like or make feel like they're part of this larger collective that's having success, a lot of the complaints or a lot of the small jealousies that often pop up, maybe those don't manifest themselves quite as much. Winning helps so much. Winning big helps even more, but getting people involved where they're actually doing some things, I think it's like anything else in life. If you feel like you're excluded, even if you're having success, maybe you're not as happy. Yeah. It really was nice that Indiana got so many people, not just the quarterbacks, in for even a couple of snaps yesterday.
No, I agree with all of that. The last thing I'll say that I thought was good to see, and again, caveated with the opponent, but in the game 1, Indiana ran a lot of RPOs, and they ended up picking the run option, and they ran a lot in that set. Obviously, Western Illinois saw that, and they were stopping against the run, and they left the middle of the field relatively open. It was nice to see Indiana and Coach Signetti and the staff and the team seeing, kind of expecting that to happen and kind of letting Rourke pull the ball and start throwing to the open spots. Again, not showing much, but, and you might, if you're new to Crimson Cast, you're like, well, that's pretty obvious football stuff. It's like, well, I hate to keep pouring dirt on Tom Allen's time here, but like last year we were playing Akron, and it's like they obviously knew what we were trying to do, and we're like, well, I think we're now an option team. We're just going to try. It's like, what are we doing? Like, it was really nice to see us kind of show one thing and then know that we were going to be kind of stopped against it, and then show something else, which tells me, again, I'm very cautiously optimistic going into UCLA, that I feel comfortable that my staff and my coaching staff of my team knows what UCLA might be trying to stop, and they're trying to move one chess move ahead in that. But it was nice to see that versus us just do a bunch of runs against Western Illinois, still win, but look like we're just kind of hitting our head against a wall trying to do the same thing over and over again. It was kind of nice to see, like, oh, we're going to play a little bit of chess here. And again, not showing too much, not too many I don't know what the checkoffs, backdoor, whatever a chess move is. Like, we're not going to show too much, but it was nice to see us kind of make one little chess move and then be like, yep, we knew what you were trying to do, and we're going to try this now out of it. And that worked. Good for us.
Anything non-game related you'd like to talk about? I'll say I went out and was in the parking lots at 12:15. Did 4 hours of office hours out there, which was great. It was a long day. It really was. I mean, I'm normally, even at my advanced age, I've got a lot of stamina when it comes to IU football. Even I was a little bit out of sorts by the time I finally got home at like 10 o'clock or whatever it was. But it was fun. It was a good environment. I mean, obviously there weren't as many people there, so it was a pretty chill environment in the tailgate area. but I thought the vibe was really nice. The weather was perfect. I mean, it was so nice outside, cloudy and a little overcast and a nice breeze. It never got too cold in stadium. The people that were there were having a great time, like you talked about with your kids. And again, I thought, the concessions were good. I actually did eat at the tailgate this time around, so I didn't get a chance to eat in the stadium. But I love all the options that they've got in there, and I keep finding new ones that I'm excited to try later on in the season every time I go.
Yeah, no, I echo all of that. The weather was fantastic. I mean, it was a great night for football. We got there. My wife has to work, so we kind of there's actually no traffic. We left here at like 5:15. Thank God for I-69 and the new exit. Like, we left Westfield at 5:15, got to the stadium right around like 6:25. Like, we're just right there, and it was.
Did I say this on the podcast last time? Like, I went to a concert at Deer Creek a couple of weeks ago, and got there 30 minutes before I intended to because of how fast it is to drive up to the north side of Indy now from Bloomington. It's kind of crazy. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, you're in the southern, the suburbs. Yeah, you're in the south suburbs of Westfield. No, it was like that. It makes it so much easier. Like, hey, full day work, and we don't have to rush out. And like, so we got there, just kind of walked into the stadium, had a good time. It was, I'm not always the most checked in on this stuff. I will mea culpa me on this. Obviously, I'm calling myself out. Nobody knew this. I was telling the kids, like, they moved Heps Rock. Let's go check it out. I had seen the video of them moving it and plopping it down. I thought it was on the north entrance, like in the Talferro Plaza. And so we get up there, and
isn't that the south entrance?
Is that? Yeah. Yes.
One facing campus, right?
No. The other, the one facing the practice.
Okay. You were right then. Yeah.
They have a statue of George up there, and it's like there's the bricks, and I thought because that's the entrance kind of on that side of the end zone where Heps Rock used to be on the field. Like, total mistake. So I'm like, yeah, but we got time. Like, we're running. It was like 6:30. Like, we got time. Let's go see Heps Rock. Let's go touch it. We get up there, and I'm like, it's not there. Like, I don't see it. I'm like, well, I don't want to just sit here. Let's just go in, and then I will give my son. We're leaving, and they have a big like map of the stadium with like pictures of where things are. And it's like my son's like, oh, it's on where they come in from the walk facing the Assembly Hall side. So later game, I will go see Heps Rock again. I missed it. I felt kind of stupid on that one. I was like, I remember them picking it up, and like I thought they just moved it to that entrance. They didn't. I was wrong. No, everything else was fantastic. I mean, we want the place to be full.
Yeah,
we want to have a full Memorial Stadium, but I will say that a 60% capacity Memorial Stadium is also, for us longtime fans, it's also really nice because everything's moving. It's easy to get in. It's easy to get out. And there's no real lines. Like, this is where Memorial Stadium really shines when there's like 41,000 people. It just, everything works seamlessly. It's when you start getting a lot of other fans and you get capacity when the things start to get, the gears start to grind, so to speak. But no, it was awesome. Again, with the kids, couldn't stay for the whole game, but no, it was a really fun experience. And I would say if you're not coming to these types of games, especially with kids, it's a really good time.
Yeah, it was fun all the way around. It was a good environment, and I'm looking forward to seeing what happens with the Charlotte game. I'm especially looking forward to seeing what happens crowd-wise with the Maryland game, because like that's one of, I don't know if you saw this, Scott, but there's 4 games now where the parking lot is sold out. Like, all the parking passes are gone, which is pretty crazy to think about. But it is going to be, if you haven't bought parking passes yet, you might be out of luck if you're trying to get to some of those games. It's going to be really fascinating because I really do think when there are a bunch of people in there, yeah, Maryland, Nebraska, Michigan, and Purdue, parking tickets, parking sold through the IU ticket office, now sold out. That was courtesy of Respectable Adam on Twitter a couple of days ago. And I'm fascinated to see, with the new food options and with all the different options that are in there and just the general flow of things in and out, I'm really fascinated to see how all of that ends up working out as far as the stadium experience is concerned. Because we have, of course, had some games where IU has struggled to manage huge crowds. Of course, that Cincinnati game a few years ago is still really in everybody's mind. I get the sense they're not going to – I get the sense it's going to be handled a lot easier this time around. I think they're a lot more prepared. And it'll be interesting. We'll see how things go.
Yeah. I mean, so many home games. It's like
home games.
We continue to see this
more after this
with the schedule, but it's like there's just no. You keep dicing it this way. It's like every year it always feels like, all right, man, if we can just get through the next 3 losses, like there's a window of hope out there if people can just stay tuned in. It's not that way this year. I mean, like, even if you lose to UCLA, you're going to come back and you're going to beat Charlotte. Or, I mean, at least I would be shocked if we didn't. So you're going to beat Charlotte. And then it's like, now you have a Big Ten game and you're playing Maryland. You're playing Maryland, Northwestern, Nebraska, and Washington. It's like, I don't see those as 4. Those shouldn't be 4 losses because they're all very, it's very winnable games. It is not hard. You don't have to wait through 2 or 3 ass kickings to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Like, the light is here. And right. I think that is what is so different is with this schedule. It's all front loaded. And I'm with you. If we don't have to beat UCLA, I wouldn't mind talking a little bit preview there because it might be the first thing I talk to get there. But like, I don't think we have to beat UCLA. I really hope we have a great showing there and at least look competitive. As long as that's the case, we come back and beat Charlotte. I'm really interested to see what that Maryland game looks like in Bloomington. Because at that point, don't want to get into the crowd discussion. At that point, like, to me, this team will have shown enough to be like, hey, we deserve people coming in and giving this, kicking the tires and checking this out, and sticking around for a little bit. Like, at that point, I'd be disappointed if the Maryland game wasn't a pretty full crowd and a fired up crowd.
Well, look, there were people complaining obviously about the crowd, and the crowd wasn't great.
Yeah, but it's Friday night against Philly. Who cares?
Well, I'm with you on all that. Like, this was not something I was that worried about. Reported attendance was 39,082. It wasn't that many people. But again, I had a tweet at the beginning that I think people misinterpreted. I said, Indiana really paying for 3 years of bad performance with the attendance tonight. And what I meant by that was, Indiana had 3 straight years of football that just was not very attractive, not very appealing. And, you win 2 total games in 2021. You win and only 1 game at home, I'll note. Like, that 2021 season, I think it's important to remember, like, the fans showed up and Indiana won 1 game at home, and it was Idaho. Not a game that you got really excited about if you were an IU fan. Then the next year, they win 3 games at home, and that was it. It was Illinois, Idaho again, and Western Kentucky, and people really couldn't even stick around for the Idaho game that much because of how rainy it was that day. And then last year, Indiana goes 3-9. And their home wins are Indiana State, Akron barely, and Wisconsin, which was a legitimately nice game. But when that's the teams you've beaten at home over the last 3 years, and you've accrued records of 2-10, 4-8, and 3-9 in those 3 years, you're just, the people that were in the stands are the diehard fans, the people that are going to come essentially regardless at this point. And as I was talking with Taylor Lehman about earlier this morning, it's like you're so much of what you see in football, especially to a place like Indiana, is you're going to have to attract people who are not diehard fans in order to get the stadium filled. And we know Indiana does not have a great history or culture with football, so you don't have a broad spectrum of casual fans who want to come in and watch the games. But performances like last night, and as you said, if you go into UCLA and you either win or at least you play very competitively, if you play Charlotte and you win at home, now people have a reason to show up and watch the games. And those people who are like, well, I'm not going to go watch them play lesser competition, missing out on the fun you talked about earlier, Scott. Well, they're going to go to the Maryland game because that's a game that's almost always competitive and it's a name competition that you'll be interested in. But to go to the UCLA thing, I do think it's going to be interesting. Indiana goes into that game right now, and granted, there's still some time, and UCLA is going to play a game later on today, I believe. They've got the bye. So this won't change. Indiana is actually a slight favorite, according to ESPN Analytics. They're a 53.8% favorite to go on the road and beat UCLA in the Rose Bowl. And again, it's a computer, but it's a computer that's looking at the performances so far. And Indiana was not favored to win this game when the season started, even though they're only a slight favorite now. That is a bit of a surprise, given that the computers generally don't give you too much credit for beating up on bad FCS opponents. And so, I don't know what exactly to expect out of this UCLA team. And I think ultimately most people you're just guessing if you really are saying that you know what's going to come out of this team. I mean, UCLA, if you look at what they did last week against Hawaii, they barely win that game. Ethan Garber's their quarterback, 19 of 38, 272 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. He was also their leading rusher with 47 yards on 7 carries. Their next leading rusher had 13 yards on 3 carries. Rico Flores Jr., wide receiver, was their standout, caught the touchdown pass, went for 102 yards, but only 3 catches. And their defense was kind of all over the place. Of their leading tacklers, their top 6 leading tacklers were either linebackers or defensive backs. You can kind of read what you want out of this because I don't think anybody really knows how UCLA is going to play in a home game. A first Big Ten game, they'll almost certainly be fired up. They've got the bye week, so they've got an extra week to prepare. They got a chance to watch what Indiana did. But much as you can say, I don't know that we know how UCLA is going to play. They could be much better than Indiana, just talent-wise. We also can't say for certain that Indiana isn't significantly better than UCLA. It is a real open question at this point. And probably the least I'll be confident in saying that the game will go one way or another of any like conference game that maybe we'll ever see, or at least we've seen in the last 5 years, simply because I have no clue how these teams really stack up against each other, how UCLA's actually going to do from a talent perspective, and how IU is going to respond to their first game away from home.
Do you know when the team is leaving for that game?
I have no idea.
Okay. I'm curious. I was with my dad this week.
Yeah.
He's doing all right. Sometimes I'm not always sure where he's getting his news from, or he was like, I think they're leaving Thursday or Friday morning, and they're just getting in at 10 p.m. at night and going straight to the game. And I'm like, I don't think that's true, but I am curious where he picked that up. I'm curious what that's the only thing that is a other question mark for me is like you have the east to west travel. How's that going to, it's the first time we're going to see how's that going to play for Indiana. But I echo everything you say. And I've been saying this for a while. I could be just estimating things way off, but all of the road games that you and I have gone to, and by the way, James and Crimson Cash is giving us crap because he's like, we have a really bad record when you and I go to a road game in either football or basketball, we lose. I say that a lot of our teams haven't been good the last couple of years, so it may not be our fault.
I'd say, shouldn't we be thanking us for going to games on the road?
Yeah.
I mean, really, why are we to blame?
But, you and I have always been pretty impressed with the turnout that IU fans can provide. A lot of this is basketball, but I will say when football fans are fired up, I go back to that Gator Bowl. It was, we were neck and neck with Tennessee in the number of fans. I mean, Tennessee had more, but Tennessee is a way bigger name and a brand that we had more than Indiana football should have against Tennessee. I'll just say it that way. I know I'm getting a lot of people in my IU sphere who are going to the game in LA. A couple of friends that I have in LA who are IU grads are going, and they know a lot of, the IU alumni association out there is very active. I know the Big Red kickoff has a lot of RSVP. So I could be, it could just be like, hey, I'm hearing the same echo chamber of the same 500 people. I just think there could be a really interesting IU presence in the Rose Bowl that maybe UCLA is not expecting from a team like Indiana. And everything you said about the game is true. And it does, I just continue to get this sense from this team, this kind of quiet confidence and kind of this like, hey, everybody just keep writing us off. Just keep thinking we're the same old Indiana. Like, just go ahead at your peril. And then we can just come and ride this wave and win. And nothing that I saw from UCLA, Hawaii, and then the 2 IU games tells me that UCLA is much better or even better than Indiana right now. So I go in confident that I think we're going to play very well. I think we're going to make it a very competitive game. And I honestly think we're going to win.
I like your confidence. Look, I have felt pretty confident about this game for a while for a variety of reasons. And really what hesitation I had was largely predicated on the idea that I didn't know how Indiana would look in these first 2 games. Right. I wasn't sure how you were going to see the transfers meshing with the returning players and what everybody was going to look like. My concerns in that area are largely reduced or eliminated by this point, having seen what I've seen in these first 2 games. And I also just think Indiana fans and commentators are trained to assume everything's going to go right for the opposition and everything's going to go wrong for Indiana. It's
right.
part of the starter pack when you sign up to be an IU fan. Like, you get that in the mail along with some coupons for like a car wash or something. And yet UCLA has a ton that's gone wrong for them over the course of the last couple of years. They
have a new coach. Like, nobody, like, we're
They not only do they have a new coach, they have an untried, untested new coach.
Yeah, no head experience.
Who was, and that, as we know, matters
a lot,
immensely.
Yeah,
and just what we've talked about over the course of the last couple.
It normally shows up in games like this, like your first major conference game.
Right. It's so much of this. If you think about, for players, so much of their ability to achieve beyond what they can do. What unlocks that is confidence, but what puts them on the level where they can achieve that even in the first place is details and being detail oriented. And what I've seen so far is a team that really does seem to be locked in on a lot of details, and a coaching staff that is striving to get them to understand where they need to do more in the detail department.
Yeah.
That really does make me more confident about this game, because look, I mean, UCLA, this is a tough one mentally for UCLA to get their heads wrapped around. They didn't play well in that game against Hawaii. They did end up winning, and I do think that they deserve some credit for that, but they won that game 16-13. And, Hawaii is not exactly what I would call a defensive juggernaut. I mean, last year, Hawaii allowed 32.2 points a game. And they, to only score 16 points against Hawaii, I have some questions about what you're doing offensively. And UCLA, just in general, there's just a lot of structural problems with their program. They don't, they have, like we said, an untried coach. They lost their head coach, the guy they had built their program around, in Chip Kelly, and they don't have a lot of NIL money. They've started to kind of pump that in. It's funny, I bought my tickets for the UCLA game. I'm already getting requests from UCLA's NIL collective to donate. And I'm going to probably hold off on that, guys. Thanks, but no. But there's a lot of things about IU that feel like they're pointed in the right direction. There's a lot of things objectively about UCLA that look like they're pointed in the wrong direction. That doesn't mean Indiana's going to win.
Right.
And we've seen Indiana teams fall apart on the road before, but I do feel good. I feel better about this team and their ability to go in and win a game like this than I would have felt about Indiana over the last 4 or 5 seasons, probably, in their ability to do the exact same thing. That it's just part of the DNA that looks like it's getting restrung or rewired a little bit, and we'll see. We could end up sitting here when we both get back from the trip and being like, well, all right, still got a long way to go with things, but I really like how this looks on paper right now.
Agreed. I'm with you.
So anyway, we will have some more content throughout the course of the upcoming week. There'll be a new version of Crimson Cash that'll, I think, come out. Maybe
we're gonna try and do it Wednesday before I leave.
Okay.
I think James and I'll try and get that done. Yeah.
And if you didn't catch our new show, Tuesday Night Bison Chat, be sure to check that out. It'll be me, Joe Cronin from IUS TV, and Audrey Marr from the Hoosier Network talking about what we saw this past week. We'll be previewing the UCLA game. Emily Fox, the producer on that broadcast. That'll be at 6:30 p.m. on Tuesday of this upcoming week. So be sure to tune in for that. And 30 minutes, it'll be live. You can check it out on the Back Home Network YouTube channel. You can also check it out on the IU Sports Media YouTube channel live, or you can listen to it in the feed afterwards per normal. Anyway, I think that's going to wrap it up for us. Scott, any final thoughts?
No, let's go. Let's go make it 3-0, man. 1-0 in the Big Ten.
It would be amazing. It would be that'd be halfway to bowl eligibility, not all the way through September yet, not even halfway through September. So fingers crossed, we'll see what IU can do. I'd like to thank all you folks for tuning in. I'd like to thank our sponsors, of course, Home Field Apparel and Hoosier Game Day Lager, brought to you by Upland Brewery. We will be back with more podcasting later on this week, so be sure to check out the feed. Subscribe to us on Substack, and be sure to check out the entire family of Back Home Network podcasts. For Scott, I'm Galen. This is Crimson Cast. We will catch you folks on the flip side. Bring back the Bison. So long, everybody.